What's going on, NBA fanatics? This is your friendly neighborhood Memphis Grizzly homer, Memphis X, and I talk hoops. Today, we are going to be talking about what's next for the Memphis Grizzlies, and is it time for the Memphis Grizzlies to make their big move? But first, every hero needs their theme music.
KeyAno.
Grizz gang, go hard. Baddest in the game, we be on one. I talk hoops, so secure. All up on the court, but we gon' score. Memphis bringing heat straight from Tennessee. Demoran's back and let's go.
All right, fanatics. As I said in the intro, today we're going to be talking about the big move. And is it the right time for the big move for the Memphis Grizzlies and what that big move might look like? Now, it's easy to see, as you could look in the playoffs, you can see that the Golden State Warriors are currently beating the brakes off of the Dallas Mavericks. They're up 3-0. And it seems like they're headed to their, sixth finals with this group. Steph has been looking good, everything. And it's been a real eye-opener for most Grizzlies fans because we get to see in real time how close this team was to making a finals appearance. The Grizzlies were able to give the Warriors a hard time, competitive series with and without Ja Morant. And as being so young as they are, they look to get better in the future. Now, it's obvious. I mean, we can go by the record. The Grizzlies were the second best team in the NBA by record. But it's obvious now looking in the playoffs that the Grizzlies were a top 5 team, which can be different things. And I see as the Grizzlies as a top 5 team as competing in the playoffs is that they had the roster and the players and the versatility to function in the playoff setting against different matchups. Now, as you can see from the first round versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Timberwolves were probably the Grizzlies' worst matchup, or one of the worst matchups they could have had in the entire playoffs. The other one is a team that they won't face, the Boston Celtics, which I think was the ultimate worst matchup for the Grizzlies, but that's another video. Now, the Grizzlies next year, as I've been saying, the Western Conference is going to be a war zone, and every team is going to have to up the ante to compete, not only just to make the top 6 in the West, but if they have any thoughts and feelings of advancing in the playoffs, because, like I said, you have Nikola Jokic, the 2-time NBA MVP, LeBron James, a guy that's in the conversation for the greatest player of all time, Ja Morant, Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, all these teams and all these matchups present different problems for every team. So teams are going to have a lot of versatility going forward if they want to make it through the gauntlet of the Western Conference playoffs. I mean, of course, like we saw this year, injuries are going to always be everything. If you're injured to a major player, you're going to be probably dead on arrival. Next season, that might even happen during the regular season. But in the playoffs, it's a guarantee. But the other thing is you have to have versatility across your roster to face these different matchups because, I mean, these guys, they give you different looks, different problems to deal with. I mean, facing the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry is a whole different issue than facing the Memphis Grizzlies with Ja Morant. Both teams are led by a point guard, but both teams present way different problems, and their star presents way different problems, and your defense has to have a lot of different answers to deal with those different problems. So, back to the Grizzlies. Is it time for the Memphis Grizzlies to make a significant move? Up until this point, Zach Kleiman and the Memphis Grizzlies front office have been taking a patient approach, letting the team develop, doing what we've been calling data collection and seeing what they have on the roster right now. Now, if you remember from the end of the season exit interviews from Zach Kleiman, they basically announced that the data collection portion of this rebuild is over. It is time for them to compete. So I will take my cue from Zach Kleiman, the head of the Memphis Grizzlies organization, and say, yes, it is time for the Grizzlies to make their big move. So as you can see, that I'm not just talking junk over here on this microphone. I am not just spitting, on this, as we go forward with, this video. I will show you. As you can see, that the last, 10 champions since 2012, I don't know who's going to win this year, but the last 10 champions from 2012 have added a major piece to their team. Either, for most cases, an all-star, or in the one case that we're going to talk about on this video, a future all-star that was identified in the draft. But like it's easy to see, the Miami Heat added Chris Bosh and LeBron James. Easy peasy. The Spurs added Kawhi Leonard through the draft and via a big trade. The Golden State Warriors added Andre Iguodala. The Cleveland Cavaliers traded for Kevin Love, traded the number 1 pick for Kevin Love, and then added LeBron James basically in free agency. The Golden State Warriors added KD in free agency. The Toronto Raptors traded for Kawhi Leonard. The Los Angeles Lakers, of course, traded for Anthony Davis. And the Milwaukee Bucks went all in with Jrue Holiday. So that's 10. The last 10 champions of the NBA have, basically preceded their championship run with a major move, either via free agency or the trade. Now, the Grizzlies, I would say, they could easily have up to max cap space this summer. They could easily, if they could, convince somebody to come in, maybe a Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, 2 free all-star level players to come in and, change the tenor of their team. And that would be a significant move. The only issue with this is that both of those guys are basically shooting guards, and the Grizzlies have Desmond Bane locked in to a very, very affordable contract for the next 2 years. And it really wouldn't make sense to do that and, and bring in a max level player over Desmond Bane, which might not, I know this is going to sound crazy, be a significant increase in talent level or, for the team. So I really wouldn't say that this offseason, that free agency is the route that I would take. I don't really see another player other than those 2 guys that is a significant upgrade on the unrestricted free agency market. Now, it would be nice if they could probably bring in DeAndre Ayton through restricted free agency, or maybe even Miles Bridges through restricted free agency. But bringing in either of those 2 players is probably going to cost significant assets, because in the case of the Suns, the Phoenix Suns, they're going to want to still be a championship-level team, or what they think is a championship-level team, even if they sign and trade DeAndre Ayton. And I don't see the Charlotte Hornets giving up Miles Bridges without getting a significant piece in return. The optics just wouldn't be there, especially since they're getting ready to hire a new coach. And Mitch Kupchak has just, I think, re-up for multiple years. So he's seemingly very safe over there under Michael Jordan. So I don't think that route is the route for the Grizzlies. So how about trading for a veteran? I've been scouring the rosters of teams, of playoff players, all-stars, and really I think the Grizzlies have a nice little core going on. They have Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Zaire Williams, Jaren Jackson, and I would say Dylan Brooks also. So that's 5 players. Uh, Two wings, well, three wings, a point guard, and a big. Jaren's versatility allows him to play center or power forward next to the right matchup. So that gives him some significant, wiggle room on who to bring in. That's why I mentioned DeAndre Ayton earlier. Although I would like Jaren to play the 5 full time, bringing in DeAndre Ayton, somebody that fits the age timeline of Ja and Jaren and Bane, would not be crazy because I think DeAndre Ayton has the potential to be an all-star in the future and maybe even an all-NBA player in the future. But, that depends because he's in the league with, Joker, Embiid, Bam. So, making all NBA could be a chore, not to mention Karl Anthony Towns. So, he has significant, future ability to be an all-star, though. So I don't think that free agency is the route that the Grizzlies
trade
should
route,
take.
especially for
you have to be
finding a
honest with
significant
ourselves,
piece, is not
the
going
Memphis
to be the
Grizzlies
route
really aren't
for
a
the Memphis
major free agent destination, and I really can't see somebody like Zach LaVine or Bradley Beal or even DeAndre Ayton. Well, DeAndre Ayton might just to make sure he gets a check, but I can't see the Phoenix Suns letting him go for significant in free agency without getting significant assets back. So I don't see the Memphis Grizzlies as a destination point for free agents. So the trade route. What do we do with the trade route? Now, as you can see, there are many ways that teams have done it. Like I said, you can go with the all-in trades with like Jrue Holiday or Anthony Davis, or you can go the distressed asset trade like how the Raptors got Kawhi Leonard when they traded for somebody that was supposedly hurt and ended up leaving them to a championship. Now, I like, for the Memphis Grizzlies standpoint and for sustainability standpoint, I like the route the Spurs took with Kawhi Leonard, and that is identifying a player in the draft that might be significantly undervalued and trading for a pick that gets you that player. Now, the Grizzlies have the 22nd and 29th pick in this draft, and I would be hard-pressed for them. It would be hard-pressed for them to pull off another Desmond Bane in the draft and get a player that late in the draft that has a significant ability or a, outside ability to make an all-star team, because I think Desmond Bane can make an all-star team. So that will be something of a chore. I mean, as much as I really respect the Grizzlies front office, I think being able to do that in, 2 out of 3 years in the draft would be being a little bit optimistic, even for me, your resident Grizzlies homer. So I will put my homer glasses off, take my homer shades off, and try to get some realistic deals done or a realistic deal done here. Now, if you remember the Kawhi Leonard trade, the Spurs traded George Hill for Kawhi Leonard, well, basically the 15th pick in the draft and the 42nd pick in the draft. So the Spurs not only got a first-rounder, but they also got a second-rounder in return. I don't know what they got for the second-rounder. I'll have to look that up. But the Spurs got Kawhi Leonard for basically George Hill. Now, looking back, this seems ludicrous, but at the time, it really wasn't a big deal. George Hill was 24 years old. He was coming off the bench, playing a significant role for a contending team. Getting a non-lottery pick for him was not seen as some kind of big deal. I mean, it would probably be like the Grizzlies trading Brandon Clark for a mid-first round pick. I mean, it wouldn't really be a big deal. I don't think teams would, on its face, consider it a steal, or teams would, on its face, consider the team that's getting Brandon Clark as making some over-the-top great trade. It would be a decent trade. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Grizzlies trade Brandon Clark, but I'm just giving you an example of the level of player George Hill probably was back then. a significant piece, a rotation player in a contending team. A pretty good player. And very young, so going forward, he would likely fit your team. And I think the Pacers rightfully identified him as somebody that could start for them. So, it all depends on how the other team sees the players that you have. But we're not going to focus on the players. We're going to on the players that the Grizzlies would have to give up or the assets they have to give up, because we'll never be able to figure that out, because there's 29 other GMs besides the Grizzlies GM, and they all see the NBA differently. Players evaluate players differently, evaluate their picks differently, evaluate future assets differently, so we can never tell. But if y'all remember, this 15th pick that the Pacers traded to the Spurs, that the Spurs got Kawhi Leonard for, that pick was almost the Memphis Grizzlies pick. Yes, that's right. If y'all remember the infamous fax machine, the Grizzlies had a deal in place to send O.J. Mayo to the Indiana Pacers for Josh McRoberts and that 2011 first-round pick. But at the end, the deal fell apart. I think the Pacers didn't fax over the paperwork in time, and the deadline passed. So I remember that like it was yesterday. I was on the Grizzlies message boards, and people were going crazy because the deal was kind of announced. And then it fell through later on at the trade deadline, if you can imagine something like that. So as you can see, it is a great thing that the Grizzlies do not have that whack-a-mole front office again, because between this and the Brooks fiasco, it was some very, very bad trade shenanigans going on with that front office. So now we're going to get back. Now, who would the player be in the 2022 draft that I, Memphis X, would target to fit the Grizzlies' profile, to maybe not, because you got to remember, Kawhi Leonard wasn't seen as some superstar. He was a super role player to begin with. And then he blossomed after about 4 years into an all-star. So who would that player be for the Memphis Grizzlies in the 2022 draft? It's got to be some player that fits a need for the Grizzlies, has the tools and the game to expand, and has to be somebody that they can get in this draft. Now, I'm not going to make any, crazy predictions that the Grizzlies are going to trade up for Chet Holmgren, or trade up for Jabari Smith, or trade up for Jaden Ivey, or anything silly like that. I do not think the Grizzlies can get in the top 5 without giving up one of their top 3 guys. So, and I don't think that's happening. So let's not even go into fantasy land with the trades. What I do think the Grizzlies can do, I think they can get into the late lottery like they did last year at number 10, and probably to the mid-first easily with the 22 pick and maybe a future asset, or maybe a young player that they have on their team. Or, to get up into the top 10, it'll probably cost them Dylan Brooks. So it just depends on, how significant they want to make the move. Now, there are a lot of players in this draft that I like, and there are a lot of players in this draft that I think they can fit the mold of the 4-starter. But if you're giving up Dylan Brooks, you're losing a lot. So I would prefer to move up into the mid-first round via picks, and maybe using their cap space that they have this summer to absorb a bad contract, because it doesn't look like Tyus Jones or Kyle Anderson will be back. So the Grizzlies will be able to use their cap space to absorb a bad contract, or maybe a veteran from a team that they want to get rid of. So I would say let's target probably the 20, using the 22nd pick, and maybe a Grizz future first rounder, or even the Warriors future first rounder that they have that's due in 2024. That is, I think, top 5 protected, and then top 1 protected, and then unprotected. So we got the pick that we're going to use, the 22nd pick, and we're going to move up in the draft. Now, back to who is that player. For me, that player is Tari Eason. Now, there are other players that I like more in this draft, but I think they're going to go significantly higher than Tari Eason. But at this point, we're a whole month away from the draft. Tari Eason has the ability to move up in the draft on the draft board. So this video could change, by the time we're at draft time. So we got Tari Eason, 6'8" forward from LSU. I think he's from the Seattle area. I think we've talked about this before. Had some outstanding measurements, about a 7'3" wingspan, significant standing reach. Big dude. Very productive in college, his second year at LSU. Wasn't too productive at Cincinnati his freshman year, but at LSU he turned it on. Played a six-man role for LSU, was their leading scorer. As you can see, his stats that I put up, his measurements that I put up. Really had a good combine as far as his measurements and athletic testing. Now, why do I like Tari Eason? I think Tari Eason can step in day one for the Memphis Grizzlies and start at power forward. And, if they were able to, just lose Tyus and Kyle Anderson and keep basically everybody else and bring in somebody else, as a backup point guard, then I would think that Tari Eason's placement as power forward for the Memphis Grizzlies would be significant. Why? I think they could bring him along slowly like they did Zaire Williams and give him a very, very defined role as a power forward. Defend, finish, defend, finish, defend, make open shots. That's it. Tari Eason has the ability to guard up, should be able to guard 1 through 5, really, basically. He is one of the guys that through the draft process that I was doing research on, and all the players that talked about him said one of his significant attributes was his strength. So although he comes in at 6'8" and about 220, he can step in at power forward right now. He has the length, he has the strength, and he has the game. And some of his weaknesses that he has to work on, basically ball handling and finishing with his left hand, they can be significantly hidden because of the role he'll be playing. He'll be playing basically the Steven Adams role, and he's a good rebounder, so that's also a good plus. That would also allow Jaren to play the 5 full-time and allow the Grizzlies to bring Steven Adams off the bench to go against second units. Now, this might not be a viable to start the season, as Steven Adams will probably, if he's on the roster, will probably start next season because, the Grizzlies were the second-best team in the NBA with him. So that's no big deal. Bringing him off the bench is also no big deal. He'd basically be replacing the minutes that Kyle Anderson got. And he would, to my thought process, he wouldn't be a significant upgrade to Kyle Anderson as a rookie, but his talent and his skill level would make the Grizzlies a better team. His ability to hit spot-up shots from 3, as you can remember all season long, one of the big problems with Kyle Anderson wasn't his play. The biggest problem with Kyle Anderson was the hitch that he has in his shoulder that significantly degraded his jump shot. If he was able to hit spot-up threes for the Grizzlies, I suspect that the Grizzlies would probably be still playing right now. And that's not a knock on Kyle. That's just, the luck of the draw as far as injuries goes. Kyle had a significant injury. Hopefully it gets better in the future, but, with treatment, but, it is what it is. So, yeah, that guy to me is Tari Eason, and I think he fits not only what the Grizzlies are doing now, but he fits the long-term timeline of the Grizzlies. Now, if you can remember, the Grizzlies will probably be looking at a Supermax rookie contract for Ja Morant. Jaren Jackson's deal kicks in next season. And a couple of years down the road, they will have Desmond Bane deal kicking in. And then, they also have to get the Brandon Clark extension done this summer. And I suspect that Brandon Clark will be getting probably Dylan Brooks type money this summer. a little bit over the mid-level, but not significantly more than the mid-level. So the Grizzlies doing this trade for Tari Eason, trading up to, I would say, the 15th pick with Charlotte, who has 2 picks, and maybe giving them the 22nd pick, and DeAnthony Melton, our George Hill, DeAnthony Melton to the Charlotte Hornets, somebody that can play defense, they can bring off the bench, play with LaMelo Ball, who's a significantly bigger point guard than John Morant. He could probably start in the future next to LaMelo Ball. He's cheap. The Hornets will also be able to send the Grizzlies back significant salary. I don't know how much salary they would like to get off of, but if they have any bad contracts. So that is my proposal. The number 22 pick and DeAnthony Melton for the 15th pick and whatever bad contracts that the Hornets want to send over. There you go. That's how the Grizzlies get Tari Eason. So let me know what you think about that big move for the Memphis Grizzlies. Like I say, I might make the big move this offseason. Another recurring video idea as far as we get other players, because there's other players I wouldn't mind doing it for as information comes in about the Grizzlies. The rumor mill is going to start since the NBA Combine is over. You have other guys I really, really like in this draft. My favorite player in this draft would also fit the same role that Tari Eason's going to play, but I think he's going top 10. That's Jeremy Sohan. So if the Grizzlies can get up to get him, I would consider that a very, very significant deal. And that might cost you Dylan Brooks to get up into the top 10, where I think Jeremy Sohan was going to go. So we'll see how that goes. I really, really do. Like I said in the last video, I really prefer the Grizzlies to keep Dylan Brooks. So